What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. As a part of my postdoc, I'm offering my award-winning thesis for anyone who's interested as a series of classes here on YouTube, IGTV, and other educational platforms. So if you're interested in the areas of brain sciences and their interfaces with the future of devices, such as AI robotics, or with any type of devices, wearables, or even implantables, stay tuned. You don't have to have a lot of background in the area. I will put up a link below to my thesis. So at any point in time, if you want to dig a little bit deeper, I do have a series of links as references to a various of research papers that you can easily find on Google Scholar in order to go a little bit deeper if you're interested. These video series will be exploratory classes where we will together explore the areas of cognitive sciences, more specifically brain sciences, and biosciences, more specifically cellular sciences, and their interfaces that we will have inevitably in the future, starting actually already, and how they could potentially evolve. It will entail both theoretical knowledge that we already know, most of which is also already referenced in my thesis, and it would also be practical thoughts around it. And those are the parts that I have explored in my thesis. And so you can just be curious as to know what these potential development will evolve, or you could be a designer or a developer. I'm offering these exploratory classes for free on these different platforms. I don't ask anything in return. All I'm asking is that if it's a food for thought for you and maybe you want to reinvent yourself, that would make me really happy to use this knowledge to kind of evolve if that is what you're looking for. And if you end up citing my work, to make sure to give credit, because sometimes that just doesn't happen, unfortunately. And also, if you choose to comment, to be respectful of the community and just to be supportive of one another. That's all I'm asking. So without further ado, let's start with one of the first topics, which is my favorite topic. In this video, I'd like to share with you and present you with the science of brain waves of a human being, what that entails, what type of information exists within these brain waves, how that is connected with human emotions, and why that is so important for us to use that knowledge, know about that knowledge first and foremost, and how that could potentially be part of the human extension with the machines, in this case AI robotics, etc. Thought consists of a series of electrical impulses. The electrical impulses elicit brain waves. Information travels through these brain waves. Why do we know that? Because our conversation, our communication, and our interaction with each other and with the world is done solely wirelessly, is through the neural waves and bio waves that we are emanating. However hard it is for us to understand it, all the information that exists, that we are communicating with each other and with the world, exists in the air that is surrounding us. Human thoughts are mainly repetitive, which means that they are mainly, for each and every one of us, a repetition of specific brain waves that are more or less unique to each and every one of us, to each person. So after a while, because we keep thinking of these repetitive thoughts, whether we are aware of them or not, the brain frequencies that we also emanate tend to be repetitive. So it becomes more or less like a fingerprint that is unique to each and every one of us. These thoughts thoughts are not as logical as we want them to be. In fact, cognitive scientists call humans emotional being as opposed to logical being, because research over the past decades has shown over and over again that most of our decisions are emotional. Now, if we think about a thought pattern being a brainwave pattern, and if we think about it from a emotional brainwave pattern, it is very apparent then to us that the study of the brain waves of emotions of human beings becomes as important, if not even more important, when we are looking at these brainwave patterns. And they become, because they're repetitive, become more or less, as I mentioned last time, a fingerprint, a unique fingerprint for each and every one of us that we can then eventually identify with, because thoughts are repetitive. And so it is important to note that the brain waves of a human being, as well as their cellular waves, includes a lot of information that then in turn can be the interface and interaction between them and the machines. And these repetitive brain waves we can then use to help design, develop, build, and create these future devices, many of which are existing today. But they are getting more and more sophisticated, and the usage of them, ramifications of them, and the future of these devices are pretty much limitless. They are endless, because we can really use these interfaces and evolve them. In 2013, when I started working on these ideas, and in 2015, when I first gave a talk about these being extension of human brains, the wearables and the devices at that time were not as sophisticated as they are today. And so when we had those conversations and when I gave that talk, it was a little bit far-fetched. However, today, and just 5 years later, those are not as far-fetched, because the technology has evolved and improved drastically. And so we are able to have those conversations much easier, because they are much more reality-based, if you will, today than they were just 5 years ago. The same goes for the way in which we can read brain waves and determine certain things. About 7 years ago, when I started all these studies, still studying the physical brain in the science of neuroscience, in the discipline of neuroscience, was much more elaborate than looking at just the brain waves, which is the invisible brain. But today, based on many research that we've done, which we have included EEG, as in collecting brain waves, we are much more sophisticated in determining the specific type of emotions and thoughts that a human is thinking and feeling just through reading and observing their brain waves. And that means that we don't need to just rely on, for example, studying the physical brain itself to determine these thoughts and emotion, but we could also do it just through the studying and observation and collecting the data of brain waves, which in this case is EEG. And because of that, there are a lot of devices that have been commercialized, many of which you may have heard already today, that you can use even today and buy them for a fraction of what they used to cost just 10 years ago, and even look at your own brain waves and look and observe them or study them, whatever the case may be. In my case, and many other scientists use them as a tool to do your research studies. Now, how do we do that? How can we observe and collect that data of brain waves that is then, as we talked earlier, filled with emotions, because our decisions and our being is based on emotions? So in the field of cognitive sciences, the scientists have divided emotions into two different main categories. One of them is called the discrete emotions, and the other area or category is called the continuous emotions. The discrete emotions are the 6 main basic emotions, such as happiness, sadness, etc., that a human can feel, and those traditionally are used more towards the neuroscience research, where you are examining the physical brain. For example, you use fMRI machine to gauge the glucose and the oxygen level of the brain, and you can penetrate and even go to the midst of a limbic system and, for example, see that the amygdala lit up based on specific emotions, and you can then determine that this person is now experiencing fear, for example. But the discrete emotions is only made up of 6 basic emotions. The other category, or the continuous emotions, it is much vaster. Essentially, what scientists did is that they used different axes, 3 axes to start with, but then they shrunk it into 2 axes, which consist of the intensity of an emotion and whether it was a negativity versus positivity of an emotion. Once they played around with emotions, they were able to count human emotions up to 4,000 different emotions. And that is the part where we are able to use EEG for, brainwaves for, in order to more or less determine what type of an emotion a person is feeling at that time, which again goes back not only what a person is feeling, but also what a person is thinking, just to reiterate, a thought cannot exist without emotion in a human being. And so that's why it becomes important. And over the past decades, our body of knowledge in terms of what brain waves in which part of the brain, which is mainly the skull of the brain, can more or less up to 70, maybe 75% accuracy determine what a person is feeling, and as a result, what a person is thinking. And if we have enough data, so to speak, in terms of, for example, a certain task that a person is doing, if we gather enough data in terms of the brain waves of not only one person, but many of them, in this case, specific sample, let's say when you're doing a research study, eventually we'll be able to look at those patterns and then make a correlation between what, for example, a person is seeing and feeling with the brain waves that is a clear pattern that we are seeing. And that is the beauty of it all, because when it's interactive with us humans, and so that interface will include not only the other type of data that it has already, but also it has a connection, if you will, with humans. If you're familiar with my work, I am all for humanity first. And so the way that I work has all to do with creating devices that enhances humanity. I know that a lot of people are questioning the ethics of it, and I'm a biggest supporter of it. And so I think that those discussions are very important as well as we move forward. But at this point in time, I am just discussing the interfaces and the technology of it. We will have discussions about the ethical part of this all as well. But the truth of the matter is that whether we like it or not, this science and technology has already evolved a lot. We may not see them because they're not mainstream yet, but they are already in labs, a lot of them in the works. And so we may as well go with the journey, but then making ourselves either involved with it and part of the discussion in terms of ethics and etc. But again, this video is just about the science, theoretical and practical aspect of it. We'll talk about the ethics of it, of course, in the future as well. There's a lot more to talk about and also to dig deeper in, but I try to keep these videos short because I was told that people don't like long videos. And so I'm just gonna wrap up this session at least. If you have any comments or questions, let me know. And next time we will go a little bit deeper in terms of what, for example, these different topics that we just talked about, what they mean. And again, if you're interested in the more details of it, feel free to download my thesis for free and look at those studies as well. Thanks for being with me. Take care. I'll see you next time.